Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. It's officially schedule release day across the NFL. That'll happen this evening. Johnny Mac, how you doing this Wednesday morning, brother, on Birds 365?
Happy Logistics Day. Happy Logistics Day. Get a bunch of dates and times, finally. You got a bunch earlier, but you get them all today.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what's the most important part of this day, John? I know we joke about it and we play the wins and losses and all, but I do think there's a real element. I mean, remember last year we got the week 5 bye, and we're like, oh, it's an early bye. It turned out to be a good thing for the Birds, or at least it seemed like it was a good thing because the season changed around. What do you think really matters today in the schedule release from a football standpoint, if anything?
Depends. How good are you? If you're as good as they were last year, nothing.
Right.
They'll just roll by everybody. If it's a normal year for normal teams, you look for themes, you look for 3-game road trips or something like that. You look for difficult, you look for short weeks, you look for difficult travel, which is not going to be too much of an issue for the Eagles this year. But I'll tell you what, same thing with home field advantage in general. If you're good, nothing matters. If you're not good, things like home field advantage matter a lot. And places like Lambeau Field, I say that all the time. That the storied history of Lambeau Field didn't exist between Bart Starr and Brett Favre. There's like a 2-decade period where they went to Milwaukee to play half their schedule because they didn't give a shit. They weren't winning anything. Yeah, if they're as good as they were last year, nothing matters. Literally nothing. They will roll over teams and win 16 of 17, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, no matter what the circumstance. But, it's probably going to matter at least a little bit more. Hard to replicate that. Possible, but hard. So, and we'll get the dates and times and all that kind of stuff, but that's all it is, logistics. You already know the opponents, so you're just putting, and it means a lot for people that travel and need to plan and things like that. So that part of it's big. But as far as the opponents, you already knew the opponents.
Right.
And that's been out since the end of last season because it's structured that way. And you know who your opponents are going to be next season by how last season finished. So, and it's also a big day for social media people around the league. It's in the league, it's known as the social media Super Bowl because they got to come up with things to unveil the schedule. The LA Chargers, they don't win a lot of regular Super Bowls, but they win a lot of social media Super Bowls. They're famous for coming up with creative stuff. Already Tampa Bay's hinting that John Gruden's going to open a box of the schedule. He's been doing that stuff that's become pretty popular. So it's a big day for the social media people.
Good stuff there. Yeah, you're right. Apparently the Eagles are going to have a good one this year too. So it's 8:00 Eastern tonight. The schedule will release. I believe it's on ESPN or NFL Network. So let me double check that. Yeah, NFL Network tonight. So for those who don't have NFL Network, I will stream live right after it if you want to check in on here. And I'll give you guys the full rundown of the schedule. Every game will be revealed. And so far, we only know 4. So nothing has changed. We got the 4 pretty rapidly at the start of the week here. And then nothing yesterday on the new game. So we still have those 4 games, John, and they're spread out, but you got 3 of 4 are home games. So you're going to figure out a lot more of the away games, obviously, tonight. What do we have? 9 home games, 8 away games this year, John?
I got to double check.
check.
No, I think they have 9 road games because they have
See, I thought they'd give them 9
on the
home
road.
They did Brazil last year.
No, that has nothing to do. The extra game from 16 to 17 goes back and forth, toggles back and forth from year to year.
So last year they legitimately forfeited a home game to play in Brazil.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot. Yeah.
I mean, no, I just didn't know if they would make it up to them on the back end. I know you forfeited it last year, but
no, that's not malleable. It toggles between AFC and NFC every year. So, one year you get the extra game. Now, they hope to get to 18 games. But now that you have this goofy, unbalanced 17-game season, you have that extra game. And it's always an interconference game, and it toggles back and forth. And this year it's Buffalo, first place team. That's part of it. And that's in Buffalo. So they have the extra game on the road. Yeah, the Brazil, we talked about that a lot. That's at the beginning of the season. Talk about what we started the show with. What matters? Well, nothing matters if you're as good as the Eagles turned out to be. But as we talked about, we didn't know how good they were going to be at that time, and that was a big story. You're giving up a home game against a potential playoff opponent down the road, and if you lose that game might end up being in Green Bay. It was a big deal. But they won the game. They didn't play that well, but they persevered. They won the game. A lot of mistakes on both sides of the football. They ended up playing Green Bay. It was at Lincoln Financial Field. They obviously won that game. So nothing matters. Extra road game, Brazil. If you're as good as the Eagles were last year, not much matters.
It's true. It's true. I'll tell you one game that matters. It's a good call here by our buddy in the chat, Bombay Trippy. He's down in the Tampa area, so he always goes to the Eagles games in Tampa. He says, "I just hope we play Tampa in November or December."
Yeah,
we talked about that last year.
You don't want that heat. Game, yeah. You don't want that humidity. The Eagles. I mean, even that though, it had more to do. They didn't handle it well. I joke, like people never think of weather games. They always think of weather games like Green Bay and cold and wind. A snow game here against the Rams. Those are weather games too. Tampa Bay, where it's 90 plus degrees and 100% humidity.
Yeah, right.
And the Eagles kind of fell apart, but you know, they also didn't have AJ Brown in that game, DeMonte Smith, Lane Johnson. So, you know, that played a factor in it as well. But they didn't handle that well. But nobody's going to handle that. How do you get used to that?
Yeah, well, I just hope it's later in the year, so it's a little cooler. I know it doesn't really ever get cold down there, but a little cooler in the November, December portion of the year. So hopefully that game is in Tampa. John, it feels to me like we play Tampa in Tampa every freaking year.
Yeah, it's been that way.
Yeah,
it's been that way. And that's been the one team they've had some problems with. They beat them once, but you know, they lost twice in the playoffs.
Yeah,
they got embarrassed last year, which kind of, you know. At the time, I thought, well, boy, that's an overreaction because they didn't have those players. Yeah, they didn't play well, but it was partially explained by not having three of your best players. And that's when they made the move during the bye week and totally shifted their philosophy, which, hey, it worked. So it's hard in hindsight, it was the right thing to do. But I thought it was unfair at the time to Jalen Hurts and the company, you know, to scale back the offense. I'm like, what's the big deal? What's the panic about? But hey, it's hard to argue with them.
Yeah, it is, but it's still in hindsight, you can still say that was a quick decision, but because it worked so well, they never felt the need to go back. Maybe, you know, they probably wouldn't have maybe made the change for so long of the year if they didn't have such big success with it. But no doubt, John, the Thanksgiving game came out. It's not the Eagles. The Eagles are playing on what's it called? Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, that 3:00 game. But the Cowboys are playing the Chiefs as one of the Thanksgiving Day games. That's a great game there. So you'll get to see Cowboys go up against the Kansas City Chiefs on Thanksgiving. So that's a pretty good game there.
Yeah, well, you know, this league is really boiling now with Thanksgiving. Obviously, the Cowboys are always involved, and the Lions are always involved. So you have that tradition, but and now that the Lions are good for many years, it was a disaster to have the Lions involved. But boy, I mean, this league is really boiling down to like they won 4 teams. Everybody's fighting over 4 teams. Yeah, which I don't know if that's good, to be honest. Rare picking at the league, you know. You gotta elevate some other teams so people are interested in those teams as well. But you know, Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys. I don't know who's for. I don't know. There's talk about elevating, you know, Ravens. There's certain teams I would say second tier, I would say tier 1 television wise, Cowboys, Eagles, Chiefs. That's it. Is it somebody I'm missing? Somebody I'm missing?
No, I don't think so. Maybe the
And that's
Bills, but not
that's it.
really. They don't pull like that. I just like the team. I mean, I think Josh Allen's fun to watch, but I don't think he pulls ratings like those
Well,
two.
everybody's got their personal favorites, but yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
right.
see Buffalo as a
No, they don't
tier
pull.
1 team.
Yeah, no.
A lot of people talked about Chicago because of the optimism, and the big markets, and maybe it turns into that. Obviously, the Giants and Jets being so bad for so long, boy, that is
Do
really.
you think the Eagles and the Cowboys has become one of the biggest rivalries in the NFL? Simply not because of the history, or I mean the history's there as well. But you talk about Ravens Steelers a lot. That's a great rivalry. But Cowboys and Eagles are dominating the ratings right now. So obviously, when you can reach more people, it has a bigger meaning. Do you think that's up there?
Well, I think it's always been up there.
I don't know. Dallas used to not reciprocate it, John. It used to be all the Eagles fans cared about it more than Dallas. That always bothered me.
Well, I always, in different eras, like in the Staubach era, the Redskins were their biggest rival, and it was more one-sided. And even in the Aikman, I would say, it was probably more the Giants, I guess, from their perspective. So, it's always, if it's, kindling doesn't have a rivalry with fire, was the old Alec Baldwin line. If it's not competitive, that's why the Ravens Steelers have been, so compelling over recent years, because it's competitive. You have the tradition, but if one side's dominating, like Eagles Giants would be the biggest rivalry.
Right.
Back in the Parcells day, the Giants are brutal. It's been a decade. They're awful. So nobody cares. They just sleep on it. That should be and could be the biggest if they ever get going again. And now Washington, for many years dormant, now all of a sudden popping up. So to me, rivalries depend on, you got to have competition on both sides. And years ago, it was Cowboys dominating. Now it's Eagles. Not that they haven't dominated the Cowboys from game to game, but that's why I think it's become a little bit bigger from their end than it used to be, because they used to dominate and now they don't dominate. So it becomes a bigger deal.
Yeah, so we'll see the full schedule tonight. That will come down. Looking forward to seeing that. We got the 4 games so far. You got the Cowboys opener, you got Packers, Bears, and the Commanders in Week 16. John, that's a home game, right? The Commanders in Week 16.
No, that's in Washington.
Okay, that's in Washington. So we're still waiting to see when they were when the Washington comes to Philly. That's a big game there, John. That's 16 games.
Yeah,
that's probably the one game on the schedule so far that we can look at and say that's going to have real ramifications, or potentially is going to have real ramifications to it.
If everything unfolds the way we expect, and a lot of things can go in a different direction, but that could be for the NFC East, that game, in theory. So, yeah, that could be a very big game from the timing. And you prefer to have the game here, like I said yesterday. You prefer in the home and home to have the home game late in case you really, really need it. And unfortunately, the Eagles have to go down there. But as I said, they've won down there plenty over the years because it's been such a bad team. But now they're popping up. It took them, they only got 6 minutes of Jalen Hurts, and they had to win with 6 seconds left, but they won last year. So they're getting better, and it's becoming a bigger rivalry again, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You need rivalries.
What do you think of the Giants, John? Think they're going to be any good this year? I think Jackson Dart's going to be.
I think they're going to. No. I think they're going to be better.
Do you think You don't think Jackson Dart's going to have success in the NFL?
I mean, he might, but it's not going to be immediate. Hey, he's not going to start. He's not going to start. I mean, that depends. A lot of guys can develop. I mean, you've seen it here with Jalen Hurts and the 2nd round pick. You can develop, but I don't see the history of the New York Giants, at least in this era, of developing players anywhere. So, I mean, they have to start doing things better. Number one, organizationally. They have some really good defensive players. We talked about all NFL teams have good players. We talked about that yesterday. We talk about that a lot. They have a really good defensive front. They're starting to go in the right direction. You should go in the right direction when you draft in the top 10 every year. You should start accumulating some good players. And all of a sudden, maybe you wake up one day and say, "Oh, they got some really good players." And they've started that process, and they seem to be doing things a little bit better. But the reality is, Russell Wilson's going to start. He's limited at this stage of his career. I imagine when it becomes clear whether that's midway through the season or a little bit later, and they're not going to be in the playoffs, they'll make the shift and go to Jackson Dart. And he's probably not going to play well early, but at least they're starting to make better decisions. But it's so difficult, though, to be – and, Saquon's the biggest example. You just can't convince people that was a good decision by the New York Giants because of what he did in Philadelphia. I mean, I know the difficulty of that from doing this show. A good decision for one team doesn't mean it's a good decision for another team.
They can't be absolved of the blame, though, because the reason they were in that position in the first place is because they made so many other bad decisions.
Well, yeah. I mean,
that
that's
was just
part
the
of it.
boiling
But,
point.
the only thing you can do when you make a bad decision is pivot and try to, go in a good direction.
Right.
Like when the Eagles make a bad decision with Jalen Reagor,
right?
Well, they pivot and all of a sudden Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are here. They wouldn't, the butterfly effect, if Jalen Reagor turned into a good player, one of them certainly wouldn't be here because they wouldn't have been looking for it.
Is he still in the league, Jalen Reagor?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chargers.
I thought he was on a 1-year deal with them.
Yeah, but he re-signed.
He re-signed.
Yeah.
Wow, so that's pretty good. Good for him.
I don't know if he's going to make the team, but he's still hanging on. And Andre Dillard as well. People bring it up and say, "Boy, that was a bad pick," and but Jordan Mailata develops into Jordan Mailata, and nobody cares really. She ended up with the wrong All-Pro tackle, but you got an All-Pro tackle.
Yeah, I mean, shit. If we didn't have Jalen Hurts, we'd still be crying about Carson Wentz. That made that a lot easier too. John, one other thing I wanted to ask you about, non-football related, but I got to get your take on it. Is the MLB did something yesterday with Pete Rose and reinstating his ability to go to the Hall of Fame. What are your thoughts on that? I know you're an old school baseball fan. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've said for years it's funny. I think Mike Gill's going to be on here in a second.
Yeah.
I think he and I have had this discussion. I've always been from day one. It's a Hall of Fame, but best baseball players, not best human beings. Yep. I mean, to tell the story of the game, you damn well have to have Pete Rose in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I think it's dumb that he's not in. I think it's dumb that Barry Bonds is not in there. I think it's dumb that Roger Clemens is not out there. I think it's dumb that people think they can gatekeep and say, I know this guy did PEDs. I know this guy didn't do PEDs. You don't know jack shit. You don't know who did PEDs, who didn't. You don't know how many players Roger Clemens pitched against that were doing PEDs. You don't know how many pitchers Barry Bonds batted against that were doing PEDs. You just think you do. So these gatekeepers are just full of themselves. Is he a Hall of Fame baseball player? Yes. It's a museum about the history of the game. He should have been in years and years and years and years ago. And I'm not making any justifications on gambling on baseball or your own team. What this came up in football with O.J. Simpson, who was obviously accused of murder, and most people think he committed murder, double murder. But it's the Hall of Fame of best football players.
Yeah, right.
Is he a Hall of Fame football player? Yes. Is he a Hall of Fame human being? Probably not.
Definitely not. Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm with you too. I just wanted to get your take on it. I figured that's the take you would have, but good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, let's get to Mike Gill. Talk about the schedule release coming up here tonight, this evening at 8 p.m. Eastern on NFL Network. We'll talk about that. We got 4 games so far. Let's see what Mike Gill thinks. We're bringing him in now from 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on the socials at Mike Gill Show and subscribe to his YouTube channel at Mike Gill Show as well. Listen to him on 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
I'm doing all right, boys. I feel like my Sundays are going to be open this year.
Yeah. We got 4 games and we don't have a Sunday game, Mike Gill. That's pretty impressive.